We begin tonight with those House conservatives taking the fight over Obamacare to the president. House Speaker John Boehner announced his intention to put the defunding of Obamacare directly into the language of the continuing resolution to fund government and to not adjourn the House until that legislation passes. President Obama appeared incredulous that the GOP House leaders could be so, well, brazen and bold in their unprecedented assault on Obamacare.
You have never seen in the history of the United States the debt ceiling or the threat of not raising the debt ceiling being used to extort a president or a governing party and trying to force issues that have nothing to do with the budget and have nothing to do with the debt.
As the battle over the budget and Obamacare begins, another scandal that dogs the Obama administration reemerged on Capitol Hill today. The House Foreign Affairs Committee holding a hearing on the deadly attacks in Benghazi that killed 4 Americans more than a year ago, including the ambassador to Libya. More than a year after that scandal, Undersecretary Patrick Kennedy faced tough questions today about why the consulate wasn't secured, why no one was punished for failing to secure it. Fox News Chief Intelligence Correspondent Catherine Herridge with our report.
The congressional hearing underscored the disconnect between the State Department and most Americans' definition of accountability.
In the real world, this would never happen. This would never, ever happen. They would be fired. They would be terminated because they failed.
The star witness, Patrick Kennedy, who oversees all U.S. embassies, has so far escaped blame for the Benghazi terrorist attack. 4 State Department mid-level managers placed on temporary leave after the assault were reassigned in August with no financial penalty.
I submit respectfully, Mr. Chairman, that accountability includes being relieved from your job and assigned to other positions.
No one missed a paycheck.
Another lawmaker questioned reports the managers also received their annual bonus.
Who made the decision, you or Secretary Clinton, to not be transparent with regard to bonus?
I don't think it was either of us, but I have to go back and find out.
While Kennedy said the State Department investigation was hard-hitting, Republicans countered then Secretary of State Hillary Clinton, who set policy, was never questioned.
The very people who should be held accountable aren't even interviewed. That's appalling.
While Ambassador Chris Stevens' deputy Greg Hicks testified in a previous hearing that Mrs. Clinton wanted a permanent mission established, Kennedy tried to dismiss the idea.
The Secretary of State never said to me, establish a permanent post in Benghazi.
But under pressure, Kennedy admitted the Benghazi mission did not meet security requirements, although Kennedy did not volunteer that he was the executive who signed the memo.
We did not have time either to build a new building or to take the months that it takes to retrofit. We took the Overseas Security Board standards as our goal.
And Kennedy blamed the bureaucracy and the murdered ambassador for Washington's failure to respond to an August 2012 classified cable, which warned the consulate could not sustain a coordinated assault.
Was additional security provided on that day, weeks before the September 11th attack?
We never received that additional request. So there was no way I could respond to a request that had not yet been submitted.
Committee Democrats were highly critical of their colleagues, claiming Republicans are hung up on the past and determined to pin the blame on President Obama and Mrs. Clinton policies, when Democrats say the committee should focus on preventing another Benghazi. Lou.
Catherine, thank you. Catherine Herridge. The House Oversight Committee set to hold its own hearing on the Benghazi attack tomorrow, with Admiral Mike Mullen and Ambassador Thomas Pickering, the co-chairs of the State Department's Accountability Review Board. My next guest will be attending the hearing, joining us to discuss the Benghazi investigation, the latest Republican push to defund Obamacare. Congressman Trey Gowdy, member of the House Oversight and Judiciary Committees, chair of the Immigration and Border Security Subcommittee. Congressman, good to have you with us. This is a bold stroke by the leadership, and it's in about 180 degrees away from the initial offering of the Speaker last week to the Senate Democrats, in which he decoupled the continuing resolution, the budget, and defunding Obamacare. What happened?
Well, I think if the speaker were here talking to you, Lou, he would tell you that his preference was always to have this ideological battle over the debt ceiling as opposed to the continuing resolution. And I know for most of your viewers that's a pretty boring point, but up here it matters whether you want to fight over the debt ceiling or the CR. To the speaker's credit, when people went to him and persuaded him we'd rather fight now than later, he agreed. And I think that's what you look for. And whoever your leader is an open mind and a willingness to change strategy. And the speaker did that. So I always wanted to fight over the CR, but I give him credit for being persuaded.
And it is a flexibility is a high mark of intelligence and leadership. But at the same time, it is interesting that the caucus itself seems to be really behind, straightforwardly, the CR fight, as you put it, and the defunding of Obamacare. Now, how realistic is it as a stratagem, a political stratagem? Is it possible to actually accomplish the stated goal of defunding Obamacare?
Well, I think so. It's certainly in the discretionary spending. Part of the spending is mandatory, Lou, as you know. But I can tell you, having just come back from South Carolina in a month-long recess, my folks are ready for me to identify something worth fighting over, whether it's Benghazi or the IRS or the NSA or the so-called Affordable Care Act. It's time to say, we believe in this enough to fight for it. And Lou, ironically, when Democrats fight, the mainstream media calls that principle. When we fight, they call it politics. And I couldn't help but notice in your intro, the president lamenting anyone who would possibly play politics over the debt ceiling. Guess who voted against raising the debt ceiling when he was an obscure senator from Illinois? Barack Obama.
So I remember
Yes,
when he was a senator, Congressman, but I don't remember him ever being obscure.
Initially, the first 20 or 30 minutes into his term, he was obscure before he started running for president. But he voted against the debt ceiling and said it would be a failure of leadership to raise the debt ceiling without dealing with the real drivers of our debt. Well, we happen to agree with him. So we're not going to raise the debt ceiling for the 83rd time in our country's history without extracting a commitment that this is going to be the last time, or put us on a path towards bending the spending arc towards balance.
The president makes an interesting point. He said, not in the history of the United States has the debt ceiling or the threat of not raising the debt ceiling been used to extort a president or a governing party. How could you have the temerity, the rashness to do so? I mean, it seems as if you're questioning the president.
Well, Lou, I'm a simple-minded guy, as you know, so I take facts kind of simply. Not a single solitary Republican voted for Obamacare. It is wildly unpopular in most of our districts. The president himself is determining which portions of that law to turn on and which portions to turn off. And you could argue that unions and others are extorting him in what he does turn on and turn off, to use his word. So he may not like the fact that we're doing this strategically, but he's done the exact same thing. He just doesn't like it when it's done to him.
Yeah, he is. It seems he's been used to some of his party following him, well, rather blindly.
This ain't a law school class. I mean, he ain't grading our papers. We are co-equal branches of government, and the sooner he figures that out, the better off the republic will be.
Admiral Mullen, Ambassador Pickering, to change the subject, will be before the committee tomorrow. We have seen this play out before. We're now over a year since this scandal began with the deaths of 4 Americans, the attacks, the terrorist attacks on our consulate, the annex. What is likely to change with these interrogatories that will be delivered tomorrow and the likely predictable responses of these two who led the Accountability Review Board?
Lou, what I hope happens is this. Your viewers that have been following Benghazi for over a year now, probably not that much. For your viewers that are curious, hey, why am I still hearing about Benghazi after a year? I thought there was an Accountability Review Board. The president told me they were going to look at, quote, every element of Benghazi. Secretary Clinton said we're going to, quote, look at everything about Benghazi. And what we're going to find out tomorrow, Lou, is They didn't look at every element. They didn't look at everything. They didn't interview Susan Rice about the false talking points. They didn't interview Hillary Clinton on her decision to ignore the escalating violence in Benghazi and keep that facility open. And they didn't interview the commander-in-chief to ask, did you call any of our allies during the siege and said, hey, we're in trouble in Benghazi, can you help us? So how can you call something an independent accountability review board when there's no independence, no accountability, and precious little review? I think that's what the viewers are going to see tomorrow.
Congressman Trey Gowdy, as always, thanks for being here.
Yes, sir. Thank you.